Hello, welcome to another video. In this video, we talk about the decline of the Chashman dynasty of the Ruthian Empire. The last two videos have been about the rise and stagnation, and now we move on to the final part, the fall of the dynasty, not the empire. Quick history. In the year 714, a man named Hergmovin I was crowned emperor of the Ruthian Empire. Afterwards, the Ruthians would go on to conquer and expand, but in the 800s they fell to foreign emperors. First there was Valsage of Ordomar. Afterwards, most of the emperors of the Ruthian Empire at this period of time would be from Joshu, a region in the east of the empire that wasn't even a part of it until 961. This is important because back in the 700s, 600s, and 500s of the Second Era, there was a thing called the Georgian Empire. And in the 6 and particularly 700s, the Georgian Empire was a rival to the Ruthian Empire, and they got into numerous wars with each other, which were usually Ruthian victories, but the Georgians also gained victories. But eventually the Ruthians won outright. However, the Georgian Empire was still technically around. It was just under the domination of the Ruthian emperors. This was until the year 961 when it was abolished. However, at this point, even with the Georgian Empire abolished, most of the emperors are actually born and raised in Joshu. The Georgian Reformation. In the 980s, only 20 years after the official abolishment of the Georgian Empire, many changes were made in the empire, particularly in the nobility and the emperorship. For one, the emperors and even the elite often wore Georgian clothing, which consisted of longer sleeves and a more dress-like style rather than a more trouser-like style, if you get what I mean. Many of the emperors didn't even speak Ruthian, the native language of the Ruthian Empire's homeland, Kosfom, and instead they spoke Deradric, the native language of the Georgian Empire, which was loosely connected to Ruthian. This adoption of Georgian noble culture into the Ruthian elites affected almost every aspect of the emperor and his nobles' lives, including food and clothing and language and even mannerisms. This ang this angered many of the people in the empire, especially on the island of Kosovo, who felt like they were basically treated as a conquered peoples by the Georgians at this point. And so you can see now that these emperors are actually more like their former, like the empire's enemies in Joshu. Because remember, Joshu and the Ruthian Empire, well, the Georgian Empire and the Ruthian Empire were at war with each other quite a bit. And at this point, they were seen as enemies. But now you actually see that the two are what is the word? They're connecting with intertwining with one another is what I'm looking for. And so you see that in the Georgians and the Ruthians are actually becoming more closely related to each other than they are separate. However, this is a very important thing in the empire because many people believe that it's Georgian domination over the empire. The Manyar War. In the year 1001, the Ruthian Empire went into war against the Algonquian Republic, itself a much more powerful state than the Ruthian Empire. In the war, the Ruthians attempted to march through the continent and defeat the Republic. However, this army was soon defeated, and the Republic would go on to nearly capture the city of Gazmal, which was the capital of the Ruthian Empire at this time, with the city being saved by one Admiral Vinvanaga. Vinvanaja. No, Vinvanaga. Sometimes I can't even pronounce my own names. And so this is a map of the Ruthian Empire and the Algonquian Republic circa 1000. So you can see that at first you think that the Algonicans have a disadvantage, but then you realize that this area is actually a lot more populated. They got better soldiers, they're more stable. They don't have their own people hating them because they're actually emperors from a foreign land. You get what I mean. And so, why did the Ruthians lose so badly in this war? The army became outdated and corrupt. This means that they were using outdated tactics and the leadership didn't change. The gear was also pretty crappy and they were also often underfunded. The navy of the empire was losing trained sailors and the ships were very old. And so we're having less trained sailors and more untrained and unreliable sailors, and the ships are also becoming old because the Ruthians really don't want to build new ones to kind of upkeep it, especially in a land where they already dominate the north, so why build more ships? You could just use the old ones. Poor leadership. So, as simple as it says, poor leadership, that be through like pure intention, just stupidity. What's the word I'm looking for? Incompetent, etc., etc. Of course, insufficient funding, and in fact, a lot of money wasn't even going to the army. In fact, fun fact, many lords actually were forced to pay by law a certain amount of soldiers for their army. Many nobles didn't like this law because they felt that they were being controlled by the emperor to essentially send they felt they were being controlled. So they used this army funding thing as a way to launder money into like their real pockets instead. Make it look like they're funding their armies, but they're actually just filling the pockets of themselves and their friends. And finally, most important of all, they just weren't able to secure supplies. Now, why wouldn't this happen? Well, for one, the Ruthian supply system had become very weird. You see, the Ruthians were used to a lot of sea transportation, and in fact, the Ruthians barely went outside of the sea, and so when they went inland and they used horses or whatever, they didn't really have experienced men. And there was numerous, you know, events that led to insufficient supplying of the troops, which led to starvation and mutiny and every other bad thing you could get. Internal wars. In the year 1027, the Emperor Deusdrian died. In his place, three contenders, Sia VI, Hergmovin III, and Askeman, fought against each other. The civil war lasted for 6 years and involved the deaths of millions of people. Eventually, Sia VI won, who had proved to be an incompetent emperor. Eventually, in 1042, a massive revolt in Armor began, which was quickly crushed in brutal fashion. This led to the First Cities War, which lasted for 4 years, further weakening the empire. Sorry about that. In the Cities War, many cities, including even Gazmal, were breached and nearly burned to the ground, and thus the name. And so this is a map of Sia, Hergmovin, and Askeman. Sia had the advantage of holding the main Kosovo island. Hergmovin held the east and Askeman held the west. The Georgian Revolt. In the year 1050, after the ascension of the Emperor Yetrusian I, nobility in Georgia believed that he would remove them from power and so revolted. This was because Yetrusian was not born in Georgia, and in fact he was pretty anti-Georgian for the most part. And though he never made any attempt at this stage to remove the power of the Georgian nobility, he was pretty open about his idea that he didn't like the Georgians in control. He hated the culture, he thought it was disgusting and gross, and went back to being more of a Ruthian culture. So, now he immediately died in battle several years later and was replaced by Agnovan II, who defeated the rebels 5 years later. He then secured his throne and made a massive change to the empire by passing down titles through merit rather than nobility. This caused the Second Georgian Noble Revolt, which was quickly crushed less than 7 months later. A third one happened a few years later, which failed. So this is a very important thing because you see, a lot of these titles were given down based on nobility to give to your powerful allies, essentially. But now he's giving it based off of merit because he needs good soldiers, he needs good generals, he needs good admirals, he needs people with potential in powerful positions so that he could secure his position and his empire's future. Massive expansion. All the way back in the 1030s, there was a major colonization in the Orklands by settlers from the Ruthian Empire. This led to them being slaughtered by the orcs in a massacre, them killing 20,000 men in total, which caused the Ruthians to invade. By 1059, the Ruthians had managed to reach the western coastline and had gotten into local conflict with the Orcanian Empire. Agnovan soon went to war against the Orcanian Empire. By 1062, the Ruthians stormed into the Orcanian Empire's capital and began the colonization of Orcania. So this map shows two different blues for Orcania. The bright blue shows what the Ruthians colonized, and the other blue shows what the Orcanians were, like, lands that were not colonized by the Ruthians. Death and decline. Eventually, in the year 1082, Agnovan died. His death was a sudden one, leading to his three sons, Agnovan Jr., Halsin, Halsinpun, and Fesfos, all vying for the throne. Instead, they decided to split the empire into three. With that, the era of the three empires began, with the chashman dynasty ruled in the center, and the other two dynasties ruled in the east and west. This immediately started a war, which lasted for 40 years until the year 1122. On this year, Agnovan's son, Melanar, conquered the Second Georgian Empire and brought back the Ruthian Empire. So, the West had already been conquered, which is why it was only the East that got conquered, so that's why too. Final emperors. Melanar's rule was short, as in 130 he died. He had no sons, and instead his brother Agnovan IV took over. However, he too had a short reign, as in 1137 he died. With no more legitimate heirs in a part of the dynasty, there would be a period of time from 1137 to 1150 where there were no emperors. Eventually, in 1150, a noble from Jorshu named Golhal began the Deldarian dynasty in the Ruthian Empire. And that's it. I do apologize for my stuttering as I kind of have something going on with my nose. But anyway, so I really appreciate each and every one of you watching. I hope you enjoyed watching the video. If you could, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Make sure to leave down a comment. Check my community posts, as I do make community posts as frequently as I can / want to. And yeah, that's really it. I hope each and every one of you has a good day or night, and I'll see you another time. Spoilers, the next video is probably going to be about the Ridmer Empire. Check my channel on what the Ridmer Empire kind of is.